How much of Drake Street did the snow cover? I guess about an inch. No, not how thick. How much between the two curbs, between the east and west curbs of Drake Street, how much of that did it cover? Well, I don't know. I mean, did it cover all of it, or not all of it, or what? No, some places it was covered, and some places it was not. The trucks were running up and down there, and naturally splashed some places clear, and some places had it heavier. Just go on and tell us what you did after Mr. Lane called you. When you got over to 132 Drake Street and he told you to go to Riley's, what, if anything, did you do? After he told me to go to Riley's for some cartons, I started across the street. In front of what place? In front of 132 Drake Street, the other store. All right. So as I started over, I looked around a couple of times to my right to see if there was any traffic coming, as the traffic comes that way from right to left. So I looked around and I didn't see nothing coming. I wanted to make sure I was safe. So the next step I took, I stepped there in a puddle covered with snow. I couldn't see there was a hole there. You stepped in a puddle covered with snow? What do you mean by that? There was a hole there covered with snow. As I stepped in that, my foot kind of buckled under me. Which foot was it that you stepped in with? The right foot. Now, when you stepped into the hole, your foot buckled, and then what happened? I fell, as if in a sitting position. Where was your right foot when you fell in that sitting position? Why, it was kind of twisted under my left foot, underneath my leg. Underneath of you. Now, did you see this hole before you stepped into it? No, sir. Did you know of the existence of this hole? I did not, no, sir. Tell His Honor and the members of the jury, how do you know how that it was a hole you stepped into? Why, when I fell there, the next step I took after I looked around to see if there was any traffic coming, the next step I took, my foot went in the hole and my foot buckled under me, so when I fell down, I hollered, and then the other two fellows came running over. I went to grab my ankle, like I started rubbing it, and I seem... Before we get to that, Mr. D'Angelo, why were you unable to see the hole that day before you stepped into it? Well, it was covered with slush and snow. I couldn't see it. All right, and when you fell, you say a couple of fellows ran over to you. You let out a yell? That is right. Who were they? Why, one fellow was Rosenberg. That is the gentleman sitting in court here? Yes. Who was the other gentleman sitting in court here? He was... Just a moment. Who was the other fellow? The other fellow, I can't recall his name. He works in the other store. I don't remember the name. Was it Saper? Yes, sir. I recall the name now. Now, Mr. D'Angelo, are you able to tell us how wide or how deep this hole that you stepped into was? It was about, I guess it must have been about 5 or 6 inches deep, anyhow. How do you know that? Why, I seen, after I went to get up, that the puddle was there, the slush and stuff kind of pushed away when I fell. That is your best estimate from having observed it when after you fell, before you fell, while you were being picked up, or when? No, while I was being picked up and I was still rubbing my leg, it was wet from some of the slush and snow there. All right, what happened? Who picked you up? Those two men. Who else was there at the point where you fell? Why, Mr. Lane came running over. They picked me up and started helping me across the street. How far did you get across Drake Street before you fell? I wasn't quite at the middle of the street yet. By the way, 132, is that on the east or west side? That is the west side of Drake Street.
Say hi to YouTube, Natasha.
Hi, YouTube.